Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Reed Show.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Mac and Reed Show. I'm Evan Mack, and with me, as always, is Mr. Ross Reed.
Sir.
Week off. Ross has got his vino going.
It's right here.
There it is. Follow us on social media. Follow me at The Real Evan Mack. Follow Ross at Ross Reed. I drank every day last week, so I'm taking a day off since I just come back from Florida. Look,
Nice.
You can't tell who's Ross and who's Mac. You know, we got a lot to get to on the show tonight. We are preparing for the NFL draft, the Bears draft, of course, too. And, it's all kicking off tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch and see. The Ryan Poles era starts very quickly. And, the second round picks are big and huge for the Ryan Poles era. But we have our first guest of the show, and Ross, our fair guest here.
Absolutely. We're pleased to welcome Van Hiles. You can follow him at VStyles on Twitter. VStyles17 on Twitter, excuse me. Van is a former Chicago Bear, also Kentucky alum, as you can see by that beautiful blue shirt that he's got on today. And well versed in draft knowledge, watches a ton of college football, former safety, grinds a lot of tape. So he brings a lot of knowledge and expertise to this conversation. Van, I was telling the guys before the show that you were the first person that told me this Pat Mahomes kid is going to be something special. And you have reminded me ever since as I was all in on DeShone Kizer. Well, welcome to the show. We're happy to have you.
I appreciate it. That was a great intro. I'm far from an expert. I was a marginal NFL player at best, and I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Yeah, you were a Piccolo Award winner too, right?
Yeah. That's how we met, and I knew you was a good guy when we never met in person, and you hit me up and said it was the score, right?
It was on Waddle and Sylvie were talking about you.
Yeah, they were talking about, and you hit me up. I'm like, all right.
I was like, I know him. Yeah, we got a very close mutual friend, Van and I. But we're happy to have you on the show today, talking some ball. I kind of wanted to start off with, everybody keeps saying that this is a down draft compared to, a couple of years in the past, right? Like there's not really a consensus, no first overall pick going into tomorrow night. Not a lot of quarterbacks are probably taken off the board. I kind of want to get your thoughts just from watching a lot of college ball and looking at tape and stuff like that. What do you think is the consensus of the talent in this draft, especially in the first couple rounds?
I personally think there's a lot of depth. I hate when people say that, there might not be a Trevor Lawrence. There might not be a stud that is going to be a potential all-pro his first year. But there's a lot of depth at wide receiver. There's a lot of depth at offensive tackle. There's real good depth at defensive end. I mean, we just went from Hutchinson to Walker to the guy at Oregon, like the Thibodeau. I mean, there's been a lot of guys that people have been trying to put into the spot of number one. And I think just have a lot of depth. There is no star, but there's tons of depth.
Sure, absolutely. You talked about wide receiver. I'm not sure how much of the receivers that you've looked at, but obviously in Chicago, wide receiver is a hot button topic because the Bears have, going into this draft, on paper, one of the worst wide receiving cores, and you want to get a full evaluation of Justin Fields. And right now it's Darnell Mooney and a bunch of guys. Are there any names? Well, number one, how do you feel about the top end of the draft and the wide receiver? And you think the Bears can get a good option in the second round?
I thought the Bears need a quarterback.
Oh no!
I'm joking. Isn't that every
Not this year.
Isn't that every year? That
Yeah.
Bears the quarterback. We should get another quarterback. That's a good one. I don't know if the Bears can get a wide receiver that I think they need at where they are. I think they're gonna have to trade up.
Really? Who do you think?
I
Who
really
are your
do.
guys? Are there some guys that you've seen that you're kind of like I'm a fan of?
I am a big fan of Jameson Williams. I'm
Mhm.
a huge fan. I don't know who the number one receiver, but he is my guy. When a guy can come do what he did for Alabama
Mhm.
on that stage with that talent coming from Ohio State,
Mhm.
and we saw how Bama went down when he went out.
Mhm.
They didn't go down a lot when they lost Mechie, but when they lost him, that offense sputtered.
Mhm.
I think he's the guy. He's got measurables. He's got speed. Now he's going to be able to play this year, but I think he's the guy that I would go for with the Bears because the Bears need a deep threat.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head with Jameson Williams. He was electric, and it was a shame tearing his ACL in the national championship game. Otherwise, he'd be a shoo-in for first pick. First overall wide receiver. But yeah, I'd say Van. We know that the Bears need depth at wide receiver, but also they need offensive help on the line for sure. I think defensively they could use, someone. You're not going to replace Khalil Mack's production, but you also need someone opposite Jalen Johnson. Is it wide receiver to you, or do you see another position that should be valued higher than wide receiver?
As a defensive guy, I'm always offense. I mean, if we remember who did Cincinnati pick last year when they need the offensive tackle, you need to put points on the board. And if you got a franchise quarterback that I think you really do have in Justin Fields, I think he will be the Bears quarterback for hopefully the next 10 years. You need him a stud, and you need a guy who is a young stud so they can grow together. And I think you can get one out of this draft. And I think you got to go receiver if you can get the one you want. Now, if you can't get the one you want, there's some offensive tackle depth too. But how far are you gonna? I don't know if all three of those guys are gonna fall to you at where you're at either. So I think the Bears are gonna have to trade up. Now I know they don't have too much draft capital, but they got to figure out a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the defense, though, Matt Eberflus, the new head coach, just kind of hopping off the draft for a hot second. He kind of runs that cover two scheme, doesn't he? A little bit, right? You're familiar with that, and you have spent some time with the Rams and stuff like that. Talk about kind of what he's bringing to the team on that side of the ball, and then maybe what he might be looking for later on in the draft. A lot of people are thinking the Bears should be trying to draft the 3 technique as well because they don't really have one on their roster right now.
They definitely need a 3 tech. Now, I don't know if they're going to get a 3 tech that's a Warren Sapp, for example, if you go that far back, because you're going to need a 3 tech that can penetrate and that can hold the anchor because he's going to be a playmaker. Because that 1 tech is going to demand a double team, and then that 3 tech is going to have to make plays. I'm not sure that's the guy in this draft, and I'm not sure they have one on the roster coming from 3-4-ish scheme. So defensively, the great thing about the cover 2 is it's a simple coverage, but it's very effective. And I think if the players buy into it, I think it can be a difference maker. I think they got the safeties that can handle it, and you have to be great up the middle. You got to be great at middle linebacker, and they got a stud, and they got 2 really good safeties. And now you just got to get that 1 tech and that 3. And if you can control the middle, the cover 2 is awesome. Now, the fans not going to like it. I'm going to say that because they're going to give up some yardage.
Right.
They're going to give up some first downs. They're going to give up 12-play drives. But the great thing about it, once you get in the red zone, it's going to be hard to beat that cover 2.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Talk about, you're a SEC guy. So any SEC names that we need to be paying attention to tomorrow? Probably, I would say any SEC names not attached to the Bamas or the Georgias of the world.
Oh man, all of them. Like
I got 2. I got 2 that goes with this one right here. Josh Paschal.
Yeah.
He was a stud for us. He went from linebacker to put his hands on the ground. he is. People are going to say he's undersized, but Aaron Donald was undersized too. You can't coach his motor, and you can't coach his heart. I think he would be a steal in the 3rd round. I really do. And then we have a interior lineman, Luke Fortner, who was a guard, came back for a super senior year, and moved to center. So now, biggest thing for offensive line, people don't understand, is flexibility. You just can't be a guard, just a guard, or just a tackle, because they're not going to carry 10 offensive linemen on game day. They might have 8. So now you got to have some guys who can move around and play guard and tackle. And that guy can play center or either guard. So I think those 2 guys are one to look for as sleeper guys. I really do like both of them. And I'm biased, but from an unbiased eye, those guys are really good. And I think they're going to have long careers if they go to the right team.
Yeah, Bears need a swing offensive lineman for sure, and get some depth on there. And Josh Pasco, I'm looking him up right now. Young man is 6'3", 278. Wingspan of 79 and 5/8 inches. I mean, he, like you said, he could be a steal in those later rounds as a guy who can put his hand in the dirt and go get after the football. Maybe opposite, putting in that rotation with Robert Quinn and God, what's the other young man I'm forgetting right now? He'll come back to me. The guy who's taking the role of Khalil Mack this year.
And remember this with him, I'm biased. He can play in space. He played linebacker. He played the boundary linebacker in 3-4 scheme. So he was in the boundary in space, guarding the curl a lot. So that's an option. You can always drop him in coverage too. I know they're going to 4-3, so maybe they don't drop him in coverage as much as a 3-4. But he's flexible. He's versatile. He can probably be your 3 tech if you really want to, because he's got enough explosiveness. He's disruptive. If you need a 3 that can also maybe move out to the end on 3rd and long, I really like the kid, and he's a cancer survivor. So he has a great story. He has everything to me. Seeing the guy grow up from his freshman year to now being a chance to go 3rd round.
Oh wow, Van. We talked about the Bears' need for a quarterback. I'm just kidding. They got their guy for now. We'll see. We'll see how Justin Fields develops now. But just going back to the draft, Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett and Desmond Ridder, guys like this. I don't. Maybe it's just me. It just feels like a down year, and we talked about it at the beginning. I don't know. Do any of these guys jump out to you as starters at this next level? Do you think they could turn into something great?
I think Willis can be great. It's tough for the draft because I think Pickett can play next year, but I'm not sold on Pickett as a long-term quarterback in this league. But if you need a guy that you can start him next year, he's on a rookie contract, which is different than back in the days when you had to pay a kid a ton of money. Get him on a rookie contract. He can probably bridge you for 2 to 3 years. But Malik Willis is a stud. If Malik Willis played at Bama, Ohio State, Oregon, he would be certified number 1 QB1, no doubt about it. Going to Liberty, I think he went to Florida first. I can't remember what school he went to first, but going to Liberty, it hurts him as far as brand, but it helped him as far as becoming who he is now. And I think he has the potential to be a great quarterback. My number 2 would be Matt Corral. In the league now, you got to be able to move. We don't have 6-7 foot quarterbacks anymore. Just pocket passers. Everybody's moving now, and he can roll out. He's got quick release. I think he's my 2nd. My 3rd is Sam Howell. Sam lost a lot of guys off that offense last year, and his numbers went down, but I think he took on a bigger role. And those are my 3. I just don't trust Pickett. I don't trust Ridder at all. He could be great, but some of the things that he did in big games, it just rubs me the wrong way.
Sure. Sam Howell too. I mean, if he came out last year, he was probably a bona fide 1st round pick, right? And now he's probably going to drop to middle of the draft. You brought up Willis. I agree with you. I'm a fan of Willis as well. So you and I have had the Trubisky talk. I feel like Willis to Pittsburgh is a perfect fit. does he start right away in Pittsburgh against Trubisky, or does he sit? And mind you, in a division that has Lamar and Deshaun now, right? And just like some guys that are really going to be getting after it at that position.
I really think he's going to Carolina. And that to me would be a good spot to sit for a year or probably a year. I don't think Darnold's going to play more than – I think they're going to try to get rid of him after this year. I think that's a good spot for him because he got a college head coach. Matt Rule is still, to me, he's a college head coach. And I think he can tailor that offense more to Willis' strength. And I think that would be a great landing spot. Now, if he can get – the thing about it, I don't think he gets to Pittsburgh. I really don't. And can Pittsburgh move up? Are they in that position to get up to 10, 11? Draft capital is huge, man. And they need some spots. They have some spots to fill just like the Bears do. So I'm not sure if they're going to move up, but that would be a perfect spot for him too. But I just feel like Carolina needs a quarterback because Sam Darnold isn't the answer.
Yeah, Sam Darnold is definitely not the answer.
Seems that way.
Well, they advertise him as the answer, though.
Yeah, and they spent quite a little bit. And listen, they had Justin Fields. They could have drafted Justin Fields last year, right? And they decided to take a corner. And I'm not going to diss corners, especially with you in the room right now, but they definitely had the chance to take their quarterback last year, and they passed on it. I think they might be kicking themselves a little bit right now.
I think so. That you cannot win in this league now with the way the rules are without a great quarterback. Those Baltimore Ravens 2000 days are over, where the offense don't score a touchdown for 3 or 4 weeks. That's just not going to happen anymore. So you got to have you don't have to have a stud, but you got to have an efficient quarterback nowadays to at least make the playoffs now. So they dropped the ball on that one.
Touching on that quarterback thing too, Aldo was asking about what your thoughts are on Roger McCreary.
I like him. Well, for the Bears,
or just in general, I don't think the Bears are in or shopping in that down that aisle this year.
I like him. I just don't. Man, it's tough because I don't like talking about kids like that. But I'm not sure he's a. Well, what round are you going to get him in? The first?
No, he'd probably be a later round guy, right?
Yeah, that's. Depends on where you can get him, where the value is. I think if you get him later, he might get a little chip on his shoulder, and that might help him. I think sometimes going in the third round helps guys because they think they are better than what they are, and then that makes them work.
Fair. Hey, Van, talking about corners and defensive players, it's loaded in the top 10 with Sauce Gardner and Kayvon Thibodeau, Trayvon Walker, guys like that. I know we talked about Hutchinson and Trayvon Walker kind of trading off for 1-on-1, but I think outside of those guys, it's kind of a coin flip. I think I would probably be going with Walker if it was me, but outside of them, if it's Gardner, Thibodeau, Derek Stingley out of LSU, any of those guys you think that are going to be, franchise players and difference makers right off the bat?
I'm a big Stingley fan, and my alma mater, that's our rival a little bit. So I saw him play in person in high school. The kid is special. And I know he went through the whole injury and all that stuff. I think for me, I know people are going to put Sauce number one because he played. And that's recency bias right there a little bit. People don't remember what Stingley did as a true freshman. Coming straight out of high school. And his dad played in arena, so he's trained well. I think he is the guy that a lot of people, and it's kind of, I can't say they sleeping on because he's going to go probably a top 15 pick, but I think he's one of the best defensive players in this draft. I like Walker, and the thing about it, I'm surprised people saying he's a unanimous number one pick because his numbers are not boggling, right? Because he played on a great defense. So I like the fact that some GMs are looking at the tape because he is disruptive. He just played with 2-3 other studs, and they ate up some of his plays, unlike Hutchinson with all the sacks that he had. But I'm gonna go with Stingley. I like Stingley one. I'm not sure Thibodeau is gonna be as good as advertised. I'm gonna pump the brakes on him a little bit. And I'm gonna pump the brakes on Hutchinson too a little bit. Not saying that there won't. I like the word overrated, because to be overrated, you have to be rated. I think those guys are great, but I think they're a tad overrated.
You like Kyle Hamilton?
I love him as that kid. Could the Bears get him?
Boy, they would.
Brown.
Yeah, they would raise holy hell in this city if they traded future first-round picks to move up for a safety. So, that's where, if they had a first-round pick, you would definitely explore it. I think the Bears they're definitely going to take a secondary player this weekend. They're probably going to take one in the 5th or 6th rounds, but Kyle's got to be going top 10.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. Man, I understand, but that kid is a stud. That kid is, man. He's Tyrann Mathieu. He's Mike Brown. Shoot, you can put him in nickel. The flexibility with him is to me what you have to have in the league now. He wouldn't be as great in the 90s. Yeah. Eye back, power, lead, maybe not as, but now with people passing the ball so much, man, he's so good. He's got so much range.
He's got a little Minkah Fitzpatrick to him, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Yeah. I think he's better than Minkah, though.
Oh man. Jesus.
I really do. I'm gonna say this: when he gets to the league, I think he's gonna get better. It's like those guys who are kind of hamstrung by the system. Mm-hmm. I think if he goes to the right spot and he plays a little freer, the sky's the limit, man. There's not too many safeties that big, that long, and that fast.
Yeah, absolutely. But his only knock that I have is Drake is his
I knew
goat.
we were getting to this.
And
he's got to get out of here with that.
That's the only blemish that's on his report right now. Is he has Drake as his favorite rap, is the GOAT rap of all time.
What is it? 19?
Yeah, I know. He's
right,
a product.
that's
a product of his generation.
Yeah, he thinks Drake and Michael Jordan or LeBron are the GOATs over.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
that
makes sense.
We'll get you out of here on this, Van. Listen, you were drafted in the 5th round. I mean, walk us through the mindset of what these kids are going through mentally tomorrow and then this weekend. Like, where's your mind at as like this is your big moment, but you don't know when your name's going to get called, if your name is going to get called. Like, what's going on with these kids?
Man, it was tough for me because I was rated at that time the 5th best corner, but I ran slow at the combine. So I thought I was going to go in the 2nd round. That's where I was slotted to go. And when the 2nd round went and when they started drafting, I'm like, dude, really? That guy? And my defensive coordinator, my first 3 years in college, Mike Archer, went to Pittsburgh and he called me. He said, son, look, you're not going to play corner in the league. So that's why you're dropping. I'm like, oh my God, dude, really? Now I've already spent money, not spent money literally, but in my mind, I'm like, 2nd round, I'm going to get about $300,000, $400,000 signing bonus. Okay, what am I going to get first? And when that slipped, man, it hurt. And so now it's a waiting game because that's the first time in your career as a kid that you don't pick the place where you want to go. You pick your college, you pick your high school. Now someone's got to pick you, and you have no control over it. So that was agonizing. And in those days, what was first 3 rounds on the first day? And I had tons of family over. Man, we had food. And now I got to look at people and say, I'm not going the first day. So it's draining because someone's got to pick you. Now, these 1st round guys, they don't have to worry about. But the guys in the 2nd and 3rd, when people start trading and you slide it for here, but someone gets in front of that team that's supposed to get you, now you might slide to the 4th round. Those things hurt. But the thing about it is when you slide, though, it does put a chip on your shoulder. I guarantee you that. And when I got called by, it was a McCaskey called me because they didn't have a GM then. And I'm like, I'm ready. I talked to Wani. I'm like, okay, you guys made a great pick, and we're gonna make this thing happen. So it's good and bad. I just hope these kids understand that there's more to just the spot that you're drafted in. Now it's a money thing, but there are more third round picks that become superstars than probably first rounds if you really look at it.
Yeah.
So if you slide, it's not a bad thing because somebody wants you.
That's great insight, and it got you to Chicago, where it introduced you to Portillo's, which is one of your weaknesses.
Oh yeah.
But Van, we appreciate you. We appreciate your time. Thank you for giving us your insight today, and say hello to the family for me, please, and come back again soon. Okay.
Anytime,
Thanks,
guys.
man.
I appreciate it.
Enjoy the draft, brother. Talk soon.
All right, man.
All right. Take care.
That was Van Hiles. Follow him on Twitter at vstyles17 and check out The Locker 411. They got a YouTube channel, and that was great. It's always great when you hear from a player like that and their perspective. The last question, Ross, is exactly what I was thinking of too. When you're waiting, you're starting to slide. Even if you're one of those lottery picks, top 10, that's obviously you kind of know ahead of time. But it's those guys who get picked on like day 3 or 4. Oh, you're waiting by the phone. You got the whole family there. You're waiting. And so that was great insight all across the board.
It is. And you know that ESPN's got the camera on you, right? And like you got all your family there and they're talking about you on the TV and you just have that look on your face waiting for that phone to ring. I can't imagine, but so that was awesome insight. I kind of want to keep it on the draft stuff and kind of go back to the Bears a little bit. So, I mean, listen, I think we need to kind of really key in on what do we think the Bears are going to do this weekend. Do we think they're going to trade up? Do we think they're going to trade back? Do we think they're going to go defense at all in the in the second round or the third round? Those are all things that, Ryan Poles obviously is trying to finalize his board right now with his team. And he talked to the media yesterday. I stand by, I think the Bears are going to go offense in this draft. I think that, they're going to get a wide receiver in the second round. I think I got my pick in my head. I'll give it to you in a couple minutes, Evan. But what are your thoughts? Do you think even defense is an option here in the second round? Like, would the city of Chicago riot if they picked a defensive player in the second round on Friday?
No way. They would be fine with it. I think given the history of the pick, it seems to lean better offensively if you get a skill position guy. If you get you look at Matt Forte in the Bears situation, and then we mentioned it last show, Devin Hester, guys like that. And the depth at wide receiver, there's no question. But you don't know in that first round if all 5 of those top guys are going to be gone. The 2 kids from Ohio State, Jameson will be gone. Even the other kid from Alabama could be gone at that point, the kid from Georgia. But I think just being even keel, we talk about best position player available. That comes as a priority. And I think what Van touched on too is important to remember that even if it's just sort of a system quarterback guy, a guy who's efficient, you still need protection for these guys and you still need weapons around them. So wide receiver and offensive line, if it's those 2, it would not surprise me in the least. But there are glaring needs in defense as well. At linebacker, defensive line, I know that people say that the 3 technique is weak, but it's a very deep corner class. So they could go that route, and they have recently done that in draft history. But I'm not totally sure because that first day is usually, it shakes up so much. I know in the chat, a lot of guys have mentioned that they're curious to see what 32 guys go on day 1. Like, okay, who do we have a chance to get on day 2? That's going to be super important. To answer your question about trading up, I don't see it with the Bears. I think they've done everything they wanted to as far as this draft is concerned, but who knows what Poles has up his sleeve at this point. But I'm going probably corner and wide receiver. If you told me, if you asked me right now, put a gun to my head.
Corner, wide receiver. Yeah, I agree with you. I think corner, we talked about the young man from Oregon, on our last episode before, we took the week off. And, the corner, I think he's still a good option for the Bears. I think, what it really comes down to is, tomorrow night, is going to dictate a lot about what the Bears are going to be able to do and the flexibility that they have going into Friday. And Ryan Poles has the luxury of just sitting back tomorrow and kind of watching all the action unfold. Somebody's going to fuck up tomorrow. Like we always know that some team is going to do something.
Hello.
Some team's going to do something boneheadish and pick a guy way too soon or something like that. I'd be interested to see when and if a quarterback run happens. I mean, this is not a great quarterback draft, but there are a lot of teams out there that are still quarterback hungry and they could get desperate. And if that pushes a couple quarterbacks into the first round, then you can see some guys start to slip into the second round. Pickens, I think, is a big name that's been a lot of on the minds for the Bears fans for the last couple of weeks now. There is some stuff that has come out this week, whether you believe it or not, about his character issues and flaws. We do know that Ryan Poles has said that he wants nothing but high character football players on his team going forward. So you start to wonder if George Pickens, wide receiver out of Georgia, is even an option for them. Should he be there at the top of the second round or not?
Yeah, Byron Pringle talk about character issues, by the way.
Doing donuts.
Doing donuts on his suspended license. What a dummy. Talking about that, yeah, I think that's important because that speaks to their on-field performance. I know there's guys who you're going to overlook character issues and talk about talent exclusively and what they did on the field. Sometimes it doesn't matter. I mean, look at Antonio Brown, who's just a head case and has so many off the field issues. But I know, talking about the second round again, a lot of mock Treylon Burks to the Bears. That's a wide receiver that could drop there. That would be huge. I think that fills a need. And then you go and address edge, or you go and address, an offensive line position player like Tyler Smith out of Tulsa. There's a bunch of offensive tackles who you don't really know if they're going to be that next bookend and blindside protector for Justin Fields at this point, because you also still got to see what you have given the 5 starters as they are now. I don't think any offensive lineman drafted in the second round on day 2 is going to be a starter on day 1, but you never know in training camp too, because injuries happen and there's position battles for that very reason. But yeah, I'm excited to see what Ryan Poles like, what his mindset is like, and I wonder what his big board is looking like right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about, again, I mean, is he a best player available guy, or is he going to go strictly to need and kind of bypass some other players to go to need? I would probably lean that he's still BPA, but still try and be very position specific. Cliff brings up an interesting point about the Bears next year having a ton of cap space, and yes, they do, Cliff. They have a ton of cap space next year, but as we've seen over the last few years now, the number one position in the NFL in terms of salary is quarterback, and number 2 is wide receiver. And listen, you want to try and get 2 stud players on a rookie deal if you can, and really allow you to maximize your free agent money in other areas on the field. If the Bears are able to come away with their number 1 or number 2 wide receiver via the draft, and it just opens up so much flexibility and wiggle room going forward in free agency next year. And a lot of these stud wide receivers, they're already locked up for multiple years to come. I'd say that the top 5 to 10 receivers all got new deals this offseason. I mean, we could see Deebo Samuel get traded tomorrow night. We could see something happen maybe with DK Metcalf and stuff like that. But you also have to remember those guys were drafted in the second round. So, you can find your number 1 receiver in the second round. I would rather the Bears go the draft route and not have to try and overpay for a guy, in the offseason. You would probably have to trade for one and then give them some new paper and stuff like that, I'll give you, I guess I can give you my thoughts on where the Bears are going to go Friday night with their 2 picks in the second round. I think they're going to go defensive tackle at the beginning, and I think they're going to piss off some people. But I think, I know, but But listen, I think if Logan Hall is on the board, defensive lineman out of Houston, I think he's a player that is too enticing for Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus to pass up. And I think he's a guy that can play inside. I think he's a guy that can play outside. I think he's a football player that can be a real anchor to pair with Roquan Smith for that defense and what Eberflus wants to do for a long time going forward. And I think while there'll be some wide receiver talent on the board at the top of the second round with the Bears draft, I think Logan Hall would be too enticing for the Bears to pass up. And I say that because I think with their second round pick, there's still going to be some good wide receiver options on there. And my second round pick for the Bears, I think they're going to pick Alec Pierce. And if the wide receiver from Cincinnati, I think that the Bears have had him in a lot. I think they probably like Christian Watson a little bit more, but I don't think Christian Watson will be on the board for the Bears at the top of the second round. I think he's going to go before that. And I think they're going to really look at Alec Pierce with their second round pick. He's a guy that played with Desmond Ridder. We heard from Van earlier. Van said he wasn't crazy with Ridder in some of the games and inconsistencies. I think that kind of hurt Pierce a little bit. But Pierce is a little bit raw, but he's a stud wide receiver. He's an awesome athlete. And I think the Bears are going to pair him. He's a little bit bigger body as well, which goes exactly what you want opposite Darnell Mooney and Byron Pringle, who can't stop doing donuts. And I think those two guys are going to be your picks for the Bears on Friday. Logan Hall, defensive lineman, from Houston, and Alec Pierce, wide receiver from Cincinnati. And I think after that, they go strictly BPA through the rest of the draft. Probably find themselves an offensive lineman at some point.
Yeah, that's definitely a need. I think looking later in the draft, it's certainly on the note of your picks, they need a wide receiver in the second round. I think the history is there where regardless of the franchise, if you pick some guy in the second round who's on your board, you got to take a flyer on him, especially with the free agency that the Bears had. It's just guys that'll be in camp. Byron Pringle's not the guy to replace Mooney at number one. And who knows, your guy could be that to be Justin Fields' favorite target. And, it's a big hole left by Allen Robinson, even though him and Justin Fields had no chemistry. But later in the draft, what are you thinking, Ross? Are we thinking a linebacker gets thrown in there? You think they do address corner at some point? You think they just build some more depth? I mean, they could get a couple offensive linemen.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we know Ryan Poles is an offensive lineman at heart. I know that he really is itching badly to get a football player in there that can be a major contributor on that offensive line going forward, especially probably on the interior line. I think he'll let Jenkins and Borom kind of play it out this season and probably address offensive tackle again next year, either in the draft or via free agency. But I really think that he wants to get an athletic kind of swing interior lineman, somebody that can play center or guard and eventually start for them down the road. And so I probably look at that probably in like the third or fifth round. And then outside of that, it becomes a game of depth, right? You're just looking for football players who want to buy into your program and who can fill in on some depth spots, some guys who don't mind playing special teams and fighting for spots on the roster. And, you would like to see them probably bring in another safety opposite Eddie Jackson, somebody that can play with Eddie Jackson and maybe eventually replace Eddie Jackson. I don't know what his long-term plans are with the Bears, with that contract and for as long as he's been there. But, I wouldn't be surprised either if Poles were to, try and, again, trade down a little bit in this draft to try and recoup some picks. He still has to fill out this roster a little bit. There's still some holes on this roster. He hasn't been, swimming in the deep end in free agency this year, I think because he's like, this is my weekend to shine. So, and then, of course, there's always the undrafted free agent market, which has been a lot more lucrative across the NFL over the last couple of years, as we see a lot of a really good talent coming in. So he's going to be a very busy guy this year, but I think he's going to look for athletic freaks, who are strong culture fits with this football team.
Yeah. Looking at the rest of by the way, I like the draft hats this year. I know you're a big hat guy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've checked them out, but I'm liking them. I think they've been suspect as of late, but it's kind of a throwback vibe to it. I was curious.
Yeah. Draft in Las Vegas this year too.
Huh? Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go.
Draft is in Las Vegas.
So the first round, Russ, that top 5. Some people throwing Kenny Pickett in the top 5, and then we've had this discussion about Hutchinson, or I don't know if Trayvon Walker gets in there too.
Yeah.
Some people have Sauce Gardner going in the top 5. What's your top 5?
Buddy. I mean, I think Trayvon Walker is the number 1 pick tomorrow. I think that's, who they want. I know there's been some internal debate that was reported that, the ownership and GM Trent Balak is not exactly on board with who they want. Do they want, Hutchinson, or do they want or Walker? But I think it's going to end up being Walker tomorrow. And then after that, I think you see a guy like Hutchinson go at that second pick, right? Because I think Detroit, he's a Michigan guy. I think Detroit would love having him there. From there, the Texans, man, the Texans need everything. They definitely need to go BPA. I think you can never hurt going with a stud offensive tackle, especially when there are few and far between in this draft. So, Ike Ngwaku from North Carolina State will probably look good there. I know a lot of Jets fans after that have been all in on Sauce Gardner, cornerback. I mean, could he be the next Darrelle Revis with that franchise? And then probably rounding out the top 5, the Giants. I mean, again, the Giants have had an absolutely atrocious offensive line the last couple of years. So if Evan Neal, the big tackle out of Alabama, is sitting there on the board, I don't know how you don't take him. And then from there, the draft gets interesting because, like Van said, Carolina's on the clock and they need a quarterback and they don't have one. Are they going to take a quarterback there? Are they going to take a guy like Malik Willis? And if they don't, does Pittsburgh get involved, at that 7th pick? I'm looking at that 7th pick. The Giants are back on the clock again. The Giants need everything. It would behoove Pittsburgh to probably see if they need to go up there and jump in and get a guy like Malik Willis at that spot. So I think the draft gets really interesting right around pick 7, 8, 9. I think you'll start seeing a wide receiver run right when Atlanta picks. They don't have Julio Jones anymore. They lost Calvin Ridley due to the gambling nonsense. They need a wide receiver there. The Jets need a wide receiver again at 10. I think you'll see a run at wide receiver at that spot, but I think the draft really starts around pick 7.
Okay. I think Jets will boo whoever it is, regardless of who's drafted, as they tend to. And Texans, you talk about one of these quarterbacks going early, like Kenny Pickett or one of these other kids, and I could see him easily going to Houston just because it's such a quarterback-driven league and they don't have anything right now. But offensive tackle or offensive lineman in general would be smart for them. And then overall, it just seems like a foregone conclusion that we'll go back-to-back defensive end position there. And then Sauce should go top 5, it looks like, all that hype.
He should. I mean, I typically hate taking corners top 5, but when you've got such elite talent like that, it's hard to pass it down. And listen, we don't even know, the Jets, who have been so wide receiver hungry the last couple months, they could take one of those picks and they can trade it tomorrow for Deebo Samuel and give him a new deal, or DK Metcalf or something like that and give him a new deal. The Jets have been trying hard to get a wide receiver. Remember, they wanted to get Tyreek Hill from the Chiefs. They've been all in on some of these receivers that have been on the market the last couple months. So, I'm excited to see what happens tomorrow night. I'm excited to kind of, sit back and watch the whole draft unfold, and not have to have that anxiety about what the Bears are going to do until at least Friday evening.
Agreed there. You get to cool off a little bit and let Bears Twitter just sit with anticipation for Friday evening.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we talked about the draft a lot, finishing up the show here.
Yep.
The Bulls are trailing. We know this. They are about to be on their way out at the hands of the Bucks, and we know Zach LaVine isn't playing, and it's just trailing by 18 points at halftime. So if you bet on them, it looks like safe.
Yeah, they were 12 points. They were 12 and a half dogs coming into this game. Yeah, I mean, listen, it was a valiant effort all year. Injuries, Injuries just caught up to them. Giannis is one of the most dominant forces on the planet right now. It's going to be really fun to watch him go up against this Boston Celtics team in the second round that just dismantled that Nets team. Shout out to my girl AC. She's watching right now. She is a huge Boston Celtics fan. I am thoroughly enjoying what Jason Tatum is doing right now in this postseason. I think he's stepping up to be a true top 5 talent in the league right now. And if the Bucks don't have Middleton coming back, it's going to be interesting. But yeah, I mean, listen, the Bulls got some work to do in the offseason. They got to get Zach LaVine healthy. You got to get Lonzo Ball healthy. You got to figure out how to get more shooters on the court. And, you retool, you refocus, and you try it again next year. They made it to the playoffs for the first time in a long time. So, shouts out to them for that. But it wasn't the way we wanted it to end. But it's going to be interesting what they see in the coming months, in the late summer, to see how they retool this roster.
Right. It's all about the offseason at this point. And you see that the inexperience is there, but also DeMar DeRozan can't just show up like he did in game one and only have really one great game where he was just on fire, making everything from mid-range. It seemed like they were trying to play that Bucks brand of basketball where they have a lot of three shooting. I mean, Grayson Allen was just not missing the last game, which is just unheard of. And Bobby Portis looks to be such a good starter for that team. And this team has experience. They have chemistry, brought pretty much everybody that they needed back. And as far as the Bucks are concerned, and now the Bulls, it's a tough position to put Karnisovas and Eversley in on the front office standpoint, where you wonder who you're going to pair with your shooters. Is Zach LaVine a guy who gets a huge deal and you build around him and DeRozan in that backcourt? But we talked about the struggles that Vucevic has had, and Kobe White looked like he was a tradable piece. I know you were talking on Twitter about Patrick Williams, and you could get some sort of talent for him as well. But I don't think anybody's untouchable. You always look around and see who's ready to wheel and deal, and you really limped into the playoffs. Remember that. And you were terrible against all these top teams that you're competing with. You're beating all the teams you're supposed to beat, but then you just get blown out by the likes of the Suns and the Celtics and the Bucks. You got swept by the Bucks during the regular season, won one game in this playoff series with them. We'll see if they make the playoffs next year, and we'll see how that roster turns around. But
yeah, I mean, listen, you have two all-stars on your team right now, right? And that's what most teams would kill for. Aldo's right. Lonzo Ball's injury really hurt them. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. He was their number one three-point shooter. He's their number one pace guy. He kind of sets the table for everybody. You're not trading like Zach LaVine. I know that's been a topic over the last couple days, couple weeks. Listen, Zach LaVine's 27 years old. He's not even 30 years old. He is a top 25, top 30 player in this league. He just made his second All-Star team this year. You cannot get equal trade value on Zach LaVine right now. It's just not existent. You could trade him for Donovan Mitchell you want to. That's trading a shiny red apple for a shiny green apple. It's the same shit. So it doesn't make sense to trade him. If you trade Zach LaVine for picks and other stuff, then you throw out every single piece of credibility that you've built over the last few months and few years with other free agents, right? Reason why you got DeMar DeRozan and you got your Lonzo Balls was because you did right by Zach LaVine and Vucevic. You start throwing that out now, you might as well blow the whole thing up. So Zach LaVine's not going anywhere. You're not trading Zach LaVine for Kawhi or Dames. Guys that are not coming here to Chicago as well. You got to be a little bit more realistic. You got to think that Vucevic is on the market. His 20-something, $1 million salary next year is an expiring contract. Patrick Williams is a piece. You have to go out there. You have to think that guys like Miles Turner are in your sights if you want an athletic big who can rim protect and shoot shots. Deontay Ayton is not going to sign a max deal in Phoenix because that owner is cheap. He will be on the market. If you want him, you're going to have to get really aggressive if you want him. But the Bulls and Karnisovas are just going to have to be creative. But I can promise you this: LaVine, DeRozan, Caruso, Lonzo Ball, those guys will be back, and Ayo Dosunmu, those guys will be back in Chicago next year. Outside of that, everything's up for grabs.
You got to retool that front court. Vucevic isn't the guy. Clearly hasn't shown up in the playoffs really at all. You would love a rim protector like Ayton, like Miles Turner, like you talked about. Shit, I'd even take a Brooke Lopez at this point. You know,
Sure.
I mean, you need experience. You need a good mix, and the backcourt set. Backcourt did their part. I think they match up pretty well defensively, and you'll get Lonzo Ball back, like you said, and we're talking about in the chat. But it's retool time, man. It's gone fishing time for the Bulls, and as the Bucks are about to move on later tonight. That Minnesota-Memphis series probably is the most exciting with these series that are still going on. I think that, the Suns and Pelicans is pretty spicy as we see Brandon Ingram going at Chris Paul. And, we saw the Heat move on. We saw the Celtics move on, as we just talked about. And then Raptors are still giving a fight to the 76ers. That Mavs-Jazz series sort of got taken over by the Mavericks when Luka came back in the last game here. But yeah, other impressions, Ross? I feel like, of these Western Conference teams, the Suns certainly looking beatable. I know they're missing Devin Booker right now, but the Mavericks are looking pretty spicy right now. I think that Minnesota, like I talked about, them and Memphis, that's a great series. It's a good test. It's a good warm up to go into the second round if you're Memphis and you go ahead there. But one of those teams is really going to make a deep run to this Western Conference Finals.
It is, but I think, what's impressed me throughout this whole run is the Golden State Warriors are back. And that is a team that is extremely scary. I don't know how they did it, but they found a way to develop another superstar player. Jordan Poole is a damn superstar right now, and he's going to get a max contract very soon. He's starting over Steph Curry right now. Steph Curry is coming back from injury, but when they put that death lineup out there, 2.0 that they have with Draymond and Clay and Wiggins and Poole and Curry, they are absolutely dominating right now. And I don't know what team on the Western Conference can really be able to keep up with that, especially if Devin Booker isn't able to be healthy for the Phoenix Suns. I know today Woj said that Devin Booker is targeting a return, in a couple of days. But if he's not at full strength, that Warriors team is firing on all cylinders. They're battle tested. We know that Draymond, who looks great right now, he looks healthy. He looks, kind of like prime Draymond. We know that Draymond and Clay and Steph have been there before. They know how to do this. And then you factor in a guy like Jordan Poole who's just playing out of his mind right now. They're outstanding. I had Suns Bucks at the beginning of the playoffs to go to the finals. To me right now, it looks like it's a lot of Warriors Celtics, which I wouldn't be mad at either. But those two teams are playing significantly better than every single other team left in this playoffs.
I thought Sixers Warriors was a good finals pick when I saw this first round kind of going on now.
But Harden's playing like shit, and then
he is, yeah. Philly's looking like they're just kind of looking past the Raptors, and you can't do that.
Yeah, and Embiid's thumb is jacked up, which is like, how long is that going to be able to hold up for him?
You worry about his health. Yeah, you worry about his health, and you worry about James Harden. There's a reason this guy has been through like 7 different teams over the last several years. It's it's kind of a character issue, like we talk about, getting fat in Houston and then going to Brooklyn, and then he's on another team. It's just too much.
Yeah.
We got a few minutes left, Ross.
Let's do it.
You want to talk about Twitter? What you want to talk about?
I don't want to say too much about.
If I had $44 billion, I'd do a lot differently than what Elon Musk did. And I know he's getting a lot of shit this week because he spent all his money on Twitter instead of doing what he said he would be doing to better the world, instead of investing in a social media company.
I would have bought like half of Rhode Island before I decided to spend Twitter or something like that. But, shout out to him. Yeah. It goes to show you, we have, 3 to 4 guys, over that are kind of controlling the major streams of speech that we have right now. You've got Zuckerberg, you've got Jeff Bezos, and now you've got Elon Musk that have kind of entered the market as well. So, Elon Musk, I know a lot of people are saying that Twitter is not very profitable, not very lucrative. The guy wouldn't be spending $44 billion if he wasn't standing to make some kind of profit off of this. So it'll be interesting to see how it folds out. I don't think that it will be, too much of a big deal in the grand scheme of things with, how we operate on Twitter every single day. But, he keeps preaching, free speech, free speech, free speech. I think Twitter has always been a product and a model of free speech, right? free speech does not preclude you from any consequences or anything like that. And I think that's what a lot of people over the course of the last couple of days are missing is you can say whatever you want whenever you want to, but if you are wrong or blatantly dangerous with your speech or your rhetoric, you will get called out and you will get punished for it, and you should. And I think that should always be the case. You can say whatever you want. We defend your right to say it. But when it's dangerous and when it's wrong, you should be called out for it.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Well said. How many times have you listened to It's Almost Dry?
I've listened to it 3 times now.
Yeah.
I do not like it as much as I liked Daytona.
Ooh, it's still, when he talks about, for those of you out there that don't know what we're talking about, it's Pusha T's latest album, and he's talking about he's the Scorsese of rap, talking about quality over quantity. And there's a reason we've waited this long for this album. The samples, the features, I know a lot of, the only criticism was it's coke rap. And like, you knew what this was going to be. The rhymes are still there. HBO tweeting his "I'm the Night King" line. I mean, he's still got it, man. He's one of the best lyricists out there. He's the best production behind him. And now he's about to go on a huge tour. I'm about to see him early on in June, and then he's headlining something in the Water Festival that looks like the best festival of the summer. But this is, you compare this and Daytona, they're very close. Like, Daytona is nuts, but this is going to age just as well. I've listened to it about 3 times.
Yeah, very good project. Happy to have it. We're getting new Kendrick soon. We're getting some of the heavy hitters of hip hop coming back right now. Kind of post pandemic. I think a lot of guys laid low, because COVID, you can't really tour, you can't really go out. People aren't listening to your music outside, and now all of a sudden you get Push, get Future coming back in a couple of days, right? Then you get Kendrick coming in as well. You're getting some heavy hitters. I would expect you'll kind of get some J. Cole, and I wouldn't be surprised if even Drake dropped another project coming up soon as well, just for Kyle Hamilton.
The Future, yeah, just for Kyle. Oh boy, the Future album, I Never Liked You, one of the best album titles.
I love it,
and he's got some nuts features on there too.
He does, as he always. Everybody in the hip hop industry loves working with Future, as they should.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. As usual, this will be on this podcast will also be on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube channel. Check out the Bar Room. Follow me on Twitter at 311Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Reed. We'll recap the draft in its entirety next week. NBA playoffs. So much stuff going on as we continue. For now, we say enjoy your week. Deuces. Be good to each other out there. So long, everybody.
Peace.